Hey, and welcome back to Workshop Wednesday. I'm Chelsea Bussemeyer. Thanks for joining me today in my cozy little workshop. If you're one of my live class students, you would have already heard me going on about the incredible dump of snow that we've had here already. And our project today is on a garment that totally fits with the season. I've got this huge pair of ski pants, or rather a really cozy pair, but we are working actually on a zipper replacement. And zippers are another thing that I always encourage my students to get familiar with, to practice, to use. They are so amazing in any project, whether it's this type of project or a very formal dress. Getting familiar with dresses, even if you're more of a crafter, putting them in bags, anything. You really aren't doing yourself any favors if you don't get familiar with them, because they really open up a whole new world of possibilities and creativity and just ease and flow. And I actually love zippers. I've heard a lot of sewists just going on about how much they dislike installing zippers, and maybe if you're not familiar with it, you might have those same sentiments, but get familiar with it and take the tips from this video. I have another video that is zipper tips. I will be teaching a class in the new year all about zipper tips. So get familiar with those zippers because they are incredible and they will take your projects really to the next level. Looking at our project today, we're going to extend this zipper. So we need a new zipper, a longer zipper. We're going to bring it right down into the body of the garment. The current zipper is only in the bib part, and my client would like it to open up further. We'll also be going over quite a few tips for zipper installation for general purposes and how you can really install zippers and have them really look professional. We're going to start off today by simply opening up this garment and taking out the original zipper and down into the body right to about this point. There we go. Now I finally have that zipper out. It was definitely not made to come out. So now that it's removed, I need to prep this garment so that I can get the new zipper in. So I can just look at how this garment is constructed and what I need to do to it so that I can easily install the new zipper and install it down into the lower section of the body. So here at this seam at the waist, they've stitched all of the layers together. So I'm going to need to open this up part way and separate the two, and then I'm just going to close this seam back up in the outer layer and in the lining layer so that I can just set that zipper in between. The same style that they did originally on the top, I want to continue that into the bottom of the garment. The other area we get to figure out is right down here at the bottom of the zipper. After opening it up, I can see that I have quite a bit less seam allowance on the one side of the zipper. It could be that just the construction of how they put it together, they use less seam allowance. It might also be that they cut that side a little smaller since they knew they were going to make it this way. Either way, I get to be a little creative with how I finish this up so that it looks finished and intentional. I'm gonna just play around with my zipper. I have this super long zipper. The client actually brought in their own zipper. I guess they do kind of more industrial sewing type things. So they've got this really sturdy zipper. I mean, it will be great for this garment because it definitely will be able to handle the workload of a garment. But it doesn't have any zipper ends, and it is a two-way zipper with 2 zipper pulls, which will be nice to be able to open up the zipper, get into your pockets, have a little bit more flexibility that way. When you're all dressed in your snow gear, it can get a little tricky. Just gonna see what happens if I just open it up. I think I'm gonna back it. I'm gonna put a little piece of fabric right at the bottom just so there's not a cold draft coming in, just to block it off. And then fold the seam allowance over just a little bit and go up the side. I think that's going to be kind of the least intrusive way that I can do it and make it also easy on myself. I always want to pick a method that's going to look great, but also be easy to sew, not give myself any unnecessary hiccups or even just steps in the process. I'm opening up across the whole front just because it's going to be much easier for me to install the zipper if I have more room to work with rather than if I just open up a little section. So stitching these straight seams back closed is going to be quick and easy, and if I do 2 inches or if I do the whole length, it doesn't really change the work that I put in there, but it will make the installing the zipper much easier. Okay, so now these seams need to be stitched back closed. After I've closed them separately, I'm just going to go over a short section here at the end, closing them back up together so that I cross over the stitching where I closed them separately and make this transition from them being closed together to being closed separately nice and smooth, and make sure that it's also nice and secure and not going to open up or rip at any point. So here we go. I've got the garment prepped, stitched back together. It was a rascal to just fight underneath the machine. I used a bit of a longer stitch than I typically use for garment sewing. And I also did take out the top stitching here at the bottom and just stitched it back up, because when I actually took out that top stitching of that fake flat felt seam, it undid all of the stitching. So I stitched it back up, and I also just back stitched here at the end of the stitching here in my lining so that it wouldn't unravel. And now that we've got the garment prepped, let's move on to the zipper. So this is a bit of an interesting zipper. It's really long, way longer than I need it to be, and it doesn't have any zipper stoppers. So I'm going to just take off the teeth here for a little bit. Usually you can just separate the teeth from the base webbing, and then see how I can maybe stretch out those teeth and finish off the ends in a way that I can wrap something around, finish it off. I got this lining, I pulled it out of my stash, did a little bit of stash diving. It's just a little remnant, but it is perfect. It's really nice, heavyweight. It's a nice black color here, so it goes with the zipper. And I'm also going to use this at the end of the bottom so that I can create a little bit of a backing. So when they zip down, it is like a wind tight end, even if the zipper doesn't come all the way down. So I've got my tools here, and I'm just going to play around with the zipper, and I'll probably leave the top end open, especially because it's so long, after I have the bottom finished up, and then install it. And then once I get to the top of that zipper, I'll finish it off exactly at the length that I need, And I was looking at this zipper here, the original one, and noticed that the zipper pull was made out of fabric. So I'm thinking if I just separate it here, take it off, that this might be a perfect zipper stop for the top of the zipper. I'm just gonna wrap it around the top and stitch it down so that it has a nice little stop that matches the fabric of the garment. I think that'll work out really well. Since I decided to do a nice square end on the zipper instead of a V at the bottom, the first step is to do a nice straight square attachment right across the bottom of the zipper. So you can see here my first row of stitching. It's nice and square to the seam and the same distance on either side. Once I have that done, what I need to do is just double check that my zipper is centered. That's right where the seam is. And then I'm gonna just snip into the seam allowance here. This is the part you want to be really precise with. I'm going to use my sharper scissors. These are my cut anything paper scissors. I'm going to use my fabric scissors here. And I want to make sure that I cut no further than where my stitching is. Otherwise, that is going to make my garment kind of lose integrity at the corner and give opportunity for fray. This fabric is kind of backed with a waterproof finish, so it won't fray that easily, but I still don't want to snip past my stitching. I'm going a little bit at an angle to leave some seam allowance for the bottom of the zipper. Kind of like you do if you are familiar with installing welt pockets or something like that. Then you also are going to snip in at an angle. So once it's snipped, I'll be able to flip it on the inside and flip my seam allowance here for the side of the zipper, and you can see right away that those corners are a much preferred end. And you can see right away that those corners make a much more professional end to my zipper than if I would have just faded it out like I was originally thinking with the V. And so we'll be able to now stitch this on and go all the way up into the bib and finish the zipper on the outer fabric. Since this pair of snow pants is so bulky, I've just flipped it inside out so I can more easily get at just this top layer. Up here is the bottom of the zipper, and I'm going to sew down from this point. I want to match up my stitching right with the end of where I stopped at the corner, and then continue down. So I'm actually going to move this zipper pull right out of my way, and then just stitch it to this first half of the zipper. If I was doing a zipper where I wanted to line up, you know, the zipper stops right at the top of my garment, I would start from the top down. But since I want to line up right with the bottom, right at this corner, I don't want to end up having too much zipper, and I can adjust the top length of of my zipper. I can shorten it up since there is no stop. I'm doing it this way around. If I had a zipper that was exactly the correct length, and I knew it matched up with the stitch line length of my zipper, I could also start with the bottom, and that's what I would want to do if I was doing this type of installation on another garment, is really make sure that I buy a zipper the correct length for where I want to install it. Once I have the first side done, I always zip up my zipper and check the alignment of the two sides of my zipper and where the fabric is attached to the first half. I want to do this so that I can transfer that marking, grab my chalk here, transfer a marking to the other side, exactly where I want the second side of the zipper to line up. There's nothing worse than a zipper that's not square at the top. Even if you have a bit of a pucker because one side was longer and you eased it together onto the zipper or something like that, it's better than the top of your zipper being lopsided or offset. That is something that everybody will notice. Once we've marked it, then we know that we for sure want this marking to end up at the top corner of our second side. So we know the placement of the bottom of our zipper and the placement of our top zipper, so we can stitch the second side in as well. So let's take a look at our work so far. I'm gonna just check it here. This looks good, nice and square at the bottom. Zipping up to the top. Want to make sure we've got good alignment. I didn't stitch right to the very top, even though I lined my marking up, because I do want to shorten these teeth and add my little fabric zipper stop, but they look like they line up really nicely. So the next thing I'm going to do is take these teeth off, finish this up so that I can totally finish off the end, stitch it up to this transition, and then we'll close the lining and do our top stitching. So because it's a chain stitch here that is stitching these zipper teeth on the one side it will unravel like a chain, and on the other sides, because I'm coming from the bottom, it doesn't unravel. So this side I did have to unpick all the way. This side unraveled like a chain, and what I'm going to do to stop it from continuing to unravel is I've got this loop here from the next chain link, and if I kept pulling on this end it would unravel the teeth all along the entire zipper. So I really want to make sure that this is tight, so I'm just gonna knot this in a quick little knot, and then I'm going to leave the ends of this thread a little bit longer so they'll kind of fade out underneath that fabric zipper pull, and then I can pull the teeth and I know that it's not going to continue to unravel. So next step is to get this little fabric zipper stop on. So I'm just going to cut this zipper pull from our old zipper in half and use half for either side. So I've taken the teeth off the exact width of this tie down from the corner edge. I'm just going to wrap that on, stitch it, and then I can trim off all of this extra and we can just tuck it on the inside. So here we go. I'm quite happy with how this turned out here at the top. We've got that nice matching zipper pull here. So for some reason it's popping up, so I think I might need to slide this side down a little bit more. I'll take a look at that. Typically a zipper stopper is out of metal or plastic, and the plastic ones are melted on. The metal ones kind of grab around. I do have some metal ones, but they're not large enough for the size of the zipper. So this is kind of the next best thing to keep the zipper pull from popping off. Yeah, so now I get to look at how I'm going to finish the lining, attach it, and also do the top stitching. So I always want to make a production plan, think of a method that will make the project as easy as I can for myself, but also get that professional finish. Sometimes you need to do an extra step like we did here at the bottom of the zipper to get the square end, but sometimes you don't. So because this garment is all stitched together on the inside, it's really hard to turn around. Usually I would stitch the lining to the seam allowance here and then all the way down and flip it around. I could do that at the very top, but quite quickly it's going to get too tight to really flip around and do that. So what I'm thinking is maybe I can do my top stitching from the back side and stitch down my lining at the same time. I wouldn't want to do the top stitching too far away from the edge of the lining, so I can kind of judge where I need my row of top stitching to be by this seam that I see, because the fabric's going to fold back right at that seam where I attach the zipper. So then I can gauge the distance I am from the edge and know where my top stitching should be. The only other thing that might cause a problem here is typically the threads bind nicer from the top. So if I'm top stitching from the bottom, it might not be as clean of a stitch line. So I'm going to give it a try, see how it goes with the thickness of this garment, see how it goes if it stays nice and straight, because I don't want it to be all wiggly all over the place. But fingers crossed, I'll be able to finish off the edge this way and attach the lining and in one sweet, smooth stitch line. Here we go. The lining is attached. I would have loved to show you the stitching of the lining. I did flip it around back and forth a couple times, stitching from the top side most of the way, did some kind of connecting stitches in the front at the top around the corner. But I wanted to show you the inside. It was such a rascal wrangling around my machine. I bumped into my camera too many times. The footage isn't good, but you can at least see how it turned out on the inside. And then I'm gonna flip these guys around and then we'll take a look at the finish on the outside. So now that I'm looking at these totally turned around, I can see here, look, that's where they stitched up the lining, closed it all in. Since I stitched the lining with the top stitching right through, I didn't actually need to do any hand stitching or close up the lining. I was able to just get my top stitching done and close up that lining all in one go. Okay, so here we have an extended zipper. Used to just go down to the waist seam, now it goes down into the bib. Let's see if I can get this at a better angle here. And we have a zipper pull on both sides, so that will be much handier for my client. Nice square finish on the end, and a nice coherent matching kind of finish on the top of the zipper here too. This is a massive zipper. The teeth are so big on here, but it is really nice and soft, and it'll be really nice and sturdy because these zippers do experience quite a bit of tugging and pull and wear and tear. So these bibs are brand new, and I think they will last my client for a long time, probably till he's tired of them. Well, that brings us to the end of this week's episode of Workshop Wednesday. I do hope you enjoyed this rather unique zipper adventure and you're inspired to get using zippers in any and every application when it comes to sewing and garment making. And as always, do pop down to the description box if you're not already part of my email list and sign up. I have a little welcome gift I'll send you, a PDF pattern and tutorial to go along with it. Or pop over to the Facebook group, and or do both, and join me there and be part of my sewing community. Other than that, we'll see you next week on Workshop Wednesday. Take care and happy sewing.